Fall Road. To acting CAO Sue Lynn, Mayor and Councillors. I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I'd like more information on the school site, on the financial plan budget, on the revenue regarding that plan. I know the revenue is declared from MACA. Is this not a contribution for common costs? The other revenue, does this include rent in kind as well as rent? Common costs, $30,000. What are considered common, and are the same items used per district, commercial, and MACA, and are they based on percentage that each entity uses? Meaning the district 26%, commercial 20%, and MACA 43%. With regards to the expenses, 18 items are listed, but which ones are considered common costs? 3 items are budgeted for less than they currently cost us. Janitorial, Fortis Gas, and Hydro. These are likely going to increase just with inflation. The auditorium, what's the plan? This is likely the portion of the school site that will be the determining factors to make the school sustainable as a public space. How will it be managed for rental fees? The grounds, what's the plan? And finally, I know this is going to take time, please could I get a breakdown of the entire school site, revenues, expenses, as per the district, the commercial, and MACA. Thank you.
Thank you. Sure.
Oh.
Anybody else would like to have a comment?
Eric White, 4290 Machosen Road. I'm looking for some clarity on a few things I saw in the budget, such as I saw bylaw is going to be up roughly $50,000. Travel and conferences is going to be up roughly $20,000. Administration salaries are going to be down $70,000. So basically the bylaw and the travel is going to be offset by administration salaries. And therefore, if bylaw is going to be going up $50,000 and also the legal is going to be going up $20,000, that obviously means that there's something in the works with bylaw that I don't think is being accounted for in the legal side of it, because more bylaw enforcement equals more legal pushback. And at the price of legal costs, I imagine going over the $35,000 wouldn't be too difficult. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I have one more thing.
Sure.
I also noticed that our fire chief isn't getting a raise this year. So that's part of the staff salaries that, a gem of our community is not seeing anything, but you want to increase costs other places.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public like to speak?
Jennifer Burgess, 3837 Duke Road. Happy New Year, everyone. It's my first appearance before you, I guess. Mostly, I think it's in the way of a couple of questions. One of the big ones is, have you received any further information about whether Machosen will be part of the capital cost of the improvement of the RCMP building in Langford? We were very concerned about that near the end of last year, and I haven't heard anything about that since. I note that you have received your RCMP costs, your admin costs for 4 employees, I gather, for this year. And that's not substantially, I think, out of the mark of usual. And that's the biggest question I have. The other comment I think I'd like to make about the school is I'm just so impressed by where it is going and what's happening to it. The almost $1 million grant that was received last year is being put to good use. I hear the gymnasium floor is finished and now you have to stay off of it for a whole week. I love to point out that the Seniors Association also got a $22,000 grant at one point and totally renovated that area, added a coffee room and replaced the women's and men's washrooms in there. MACA, I believe, has a capital plan of upgrading the upstairs now in the MACA area. Yay, the brew pub is open and I think doing A-okay. And Instinct is well underway. I do have a question about the 2 classrooms that have been renovated recently and new windows were put in. My concept was those 2 classrooms were not to be fully used by Instinct, but to be community use also. So I wondered if I could have some clarification on whether those 2 bigger classrooms are going to be available for other opportunities. So that's about it. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else? Okay. So we'll move on to reports. First up is the staff report, the draft for the 2023-2027 operating budget. And I'll ask our CFO to open this part of the meeting, please. But before we do, could maybe we turn on some more lights? It's a little dark.
Sure.
Yeah. Thank you.
I have to remember to push this. Right? Don't take my finger off, is that the deal? Okay. So it's just a couple of things I want to bring attention to on page. Let me just see here. Page 6. It has a bunch of numbers, which is separated by salaries and others, and you'll get more detail of that on page 7, because that's the breakdown on the document that says 2022 budget versus 2023 budget. So the one thing I want to make it clear to you is that those numbers there are based on budgets between 2022 and 2023, with the exception of items that where the actuals far exceed the actuals, the budget. So for example, if you look at council advertising on page 7, excuse me, the budget for 2022 was $1,000, and the actuals came in almost close to $4,000. So on that basis, the budget has now been revised to $4,000, which will reflect the actuals. Okay. So hopefully this list here will give you a better understanding of the majority of the cost drivers that is included in this budget. Another thing to point out to you as well is that you will notice that this budget is a little bit higher than what was originally proposed. And those again come down to one of the biggest areas is in public works. So the proposed budget in public works section assumes that you want to retain the service level as it currently stands. So for example, if you were to say that as a committee you're not comfortable putting that additional funding towards ditching, I just want you to be aware that this is assuming everything stays the same, and also picking up on duties and areas that were not done in 2022, with ditching being the primary one. Okay? And same thing with the shoulder mowing as well. So those were not done to the level that should have been done in 2022. So in this budget, we're proposing that we pick up and do the part that wasn't done completely in 2022. So those are the things that to keep in mind as you move forward on the discussion.
That's all? Okay, thank you. Committee, do you have any questions for Lula?
I have a question.
Yes, Jay? Councillor Schuster?
Thanks, Councillor Donaldson. So I'm just wondering, so we went through the exercise last time of weighing and ranking the one-time costs. Was that at all reflected, or is that reflected in this budget sort of summary that you provided, the budget information you provided?
No, excuse me, no, those are not included because those are the one-time requests that we will discuss after capital. So you'll see that there's no reference to capital as well. If you recall from our last exercise of ranking those projects, those were both capital and one-time, which will be discussed in subsequent meetings. Today, we're only looking at the operating budget.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Gray?
Through the chair, if I could ask Sue Lynn, we've gone from our January 2023 8.4% tax increase. Then we've had some discussions, and now, and so some changes have been made to the sheet, to the budget, proposed budget, and we're at 11.7% tax increase. What are the items that we've got there? I think some are council, some are staff training, bylaw, legal. Those are some of the topics I've got. Do you have a list of them, or? Yeah.
Sure, Councillor Gray. So the big items that saw a significant increase in the budget is council travel conference. Keep in mind, I've noted on page 7, is that we are budgeting for, keep in mind this is 3 new council members. So there's training and orientation that's built into the conference and travel. And also that we have assumed that all of council will be attending 2 conferences that's noted on page 7. Okay, so that's a big item. Same with staff training and education. We do have staff members that have moved to new positions, and then we're proposing that they receive the appropriate training so that they can perform the responsibilities of the job to at a higher level. And the other items that are big ticket items are what I referred to earlier, being public works. That's road surface maintenance, road cleaning, mowing shoulders, and road markings, as well as a little bit for signs, replacement, cleaning, and just getting the signs up to standards. So those are the big ticket items. And another one to note as well is the insurance for the school. That has seen significant increase for the fact that due to the fact that the school was underinsured for 2022, there was difficulty getting insurance, so we basically just got whatever insurance we were able to get. For 2023, we had a more comprehensive look at what we actually need, and this is one of the reasons for the higher insurance premium for the school.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor?
Yeah, the CFO. I'm just wondering where do the amount of money that comes in from grants, say all the grants that have come into the fire department and even the one for the school and the ICBC grant and the Vision Zero grant. Just wondering where that income from grants goes.
So you, so you will not see the full grant amount. So for example, if you take the school, the full 950,000, 960,000, whatever, it's not going to be reflected on, this is what you call the income statement items. So it's just revenue and expenses. So the grant will sit in a liability account. So you will see the revenue once it's spent. So for example, if you spend 100,000 for the gym floor, I'm just throwing a number out there, you'll see the 100,000 revenue. and the
Oh.
corresponding expenses. So the rest of it stays in the liability account, because you haven't spent it yet.
Mary Lou.
It's more a comment rather than a question. Thank you for this report. And thank you for including some of the items that we asked. I really appreciate it. What I think is important for the public to understand is this is a draft. It's written all over here, draft, draft, draft. This is one of our starting points. So this is, although we were at another percentage before, we're at 11.7 now. This is our starting point, and we'll move forward with deliberations. So this is draft, and that is, I think, important for the public to remember. Okay.
Thank you. And on that, I'd like to say that with the comments and public participation and letters and emails that we've received, a lot of concerns, we're certainly taking that to heart, and we will do our best to work through this budget as a team and shave where we can, and maybe some places we won't be able to, but there'll be a lot to learn and a lot of understanding along the way. Okay, so committee, I would like to ask one question that came up in public participation, and it's been asked of me a couple of times previously, and that is where we could interject public participation throughout our meeting process. Do you want to continue as we've got it laid out in the agenda, or would you like to embrace the suggestion that Mr. Smurfett suggested after each section of on the spreadsheets? Some of these sections we'll go through fairly quickly. We're not going to do line by line because some of them are fixed costs. It wouldn't be necessary. And probably not everybody's going to comment, but we will do this as methodically as we can. There's not a rush. Thoughts? Councillor Gray?
I'm happy to defer to the experience of the two councillors here in the last council.
Okay, I'll comment. So we've done it both ways in the past, and certainly as a participant, it doesn't feel good to not have your not be able to speak in real time. And since we're flexible, we could try it if that's what Mr. Smurfett has suggested. It's really up to the chair of the finance committee how you want to go forth. We could try it. If it doesn't work, then we can go back next time to the other one. It's totally up to you. We have done it, as you've seen from your experience, in both ways.
Okay.
Councillor Donaldson?
Yes, Councillor.
I'd be open to giving it a try as well.
Okay. Councillor, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Nope,
No.
nothing else.
Councillor.
Sure, it's fine with me.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for being accommodating on these requests. So that we understand how to navigate this, and for those who are at home and can follow us, a little explanation of coordinates in mapping through this. So on the very first page of the spreadsheet, it would be page 11. Council, your numbers might be a little out of order because we have some pinks that were given to us, correct? So additional spreadsheet. Okay, so this would be the one that's called General Governance. In the very first column on the left, you'll see a row of ones, a column of ones. Disregard that, I have no idea what that is for, but every page has it. It is the second column that you'll see numbers, and those numbers are indicative of each section. So as an example, the first section is revenue, and the number code is 1759. The column beside that is the number for the line item. That will be what I'll be working from, is those two. Across the top of the page, you'll see the years. You'll see 2021 as a comparison, the budget, the actual, and the 2022, the budget year-to-date projections, and then 23 and onward for the 5-year financial plan. If it gets confusing, please stop me at any point in time or get me back on track, because I might get confused as well. Sorry. Okay, so any questions regarding the first section, which is revenue, so section 1759. We won't go line by line, I'm just going to talk about the section and then we'll refer to the line items. No comments?
So we're on page 9?
Page 11. General revenue, or general government.
Page 9.
It's page 9.
Page 9.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, I do have a question for our CFO. In the line item that is 610, COVID-19 Restart Grant, we've got $10,000 earmarked for 2023. This is throughout several of the departments with the COVID. Do we have a full sum of how much we actually have left in the COVID account?
You have it on your pink sheet.
Okay.
It says use of COVID restart grant funds, 2020 to 2024.
Okay. Okay, so that's the first section. Does anyone from the public wish to speak to this?
The general government section?
Yes?
Oh, certainly.
Councillor Donaldson, I have one question.
Yes, Councillor Schutten?
Okay, so I think, okay, so general government, I'm looking at line item, it begins 2021 and 2480, and it's staff training and education. This is by no means to criticize, I'm just inquiring here. So the budget for 2022 was 8,500, and the actual, the year-to-date projection is much lower.
I'm sorry to interject, Jay. I
Yeah.
don't see where you are.
Okay, so I'm on,
2480.
Under
so
personnel.
it's 2480 is maybe the number we're supposed to be looking at. Does anyone see? It's under personnel.
I guess, Jay, we're just talking about the top box of revenue.
Revenue, oh, I'm sorry. Okay,
We
okay. I'll leave this.
haven't got down the page yet.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Mr. Smurfy?
Oh, I thought you were going to talk about the whole general government section first.
We could do that. That would make more sense to me. It would be less,
Jumping up and down.
yeah, okay. Let's do that. Okay.
Sorry, I apologize.
All right. Under legal services, are there any comments that the committee has? Okay, I have a question for Sue Lynn. We have a budget of $5,000 for 2023, and we didn't have anything for 2022. No expenses. This is for the line item of 2750, Treaty Advisory Commission, and we didn't have any expenses in 2021. So is there a need for us to have $5,000, and if not, can we reduce that to $1,000?
There is a need for that. So what the practice, the TTAC's practice is they will levy when their funding is low, and they've been in a positive position for the past couple of years, but they have indicated to us that this year they will be collecting.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so anybody have any comments for personnel in the committee?
Yeah, I do.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm just looking at again, staff training and education. I noticed that the budget for 2022 was $8,500, and the year-to-date spends $2,213, and it's projected to remain that way. And then we've got a budgeted amount of $14,000. My question is, it is a question, I just want to know what assurances do we have that that money is actually going to be spent, and is there any planning that's gone in as to why that has to be a higher number than it was in the previous year?
Sulin?
So as I've indicated earlier in my opening statement is that we do have some staff members that have been promoted to positions. So this is to provide them with the appropriate training, and also to keep in mind that a lot of the staff were not able to attend training last year. That's why it's reflected in the low actuals.
Okay, no, fair point. Fair point. So, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Gray?
And I guess I just say it's important that the staff be trained and that they have opportunities for training as best we can provide.
Yeah, and again, I would echo Councillor Gray too. Part of my question is not, again, to criticize, just to make sure that we know that that money is going to be spent and spent on effective training. So.
Okay, thank you. Okay, down to admin and office expenses. Any questions, queries, committee? Mayor Little?
Yeah, actually, if we can just bump back up to legislative services, item 2481. So that has increased substantially to 35,000. So this is legislative services, travels and conferences. That's quite a bump from either of the two previous years. Could you comment on that through the chair?
Sure I can, thank you. So in the past, practice is that not all of council attended conferences. So in this budget, we have budgeted for all of council to attend the two conferences, those being AVIC and UBCM, and also new council training and orientation. So not so much orientation, but new council training.
And orientation, because we did pay for the orientations in Esquimalt as well, right? Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so so on line item 2310 website, we have a budget line, a budget of $10,000 for 2023, and on average we paid about $8,000. Does this money come out of the COVID at all? For upgrades, or we just did two big upgrades of revamping the website. So is this what this is covering?
So the website maintenance is not covered from COVID funding, but the IT maintenance is.
Oh, okay. Yes, Mayor Little?
Yeah, I think that might be confusing for people. Maybe we can explain the website and how it's functioned here, what the package that was bought, and if you could clarify that for everybody. It's not the IT people that are maintaining the website.
No, that's correct. So that the website maintenance is separate from the IT maintenance. So if I could offer explanation as to why the IT maintenance is being part of it's being funded from the COVID funding, is the rationale that as a result of COVID. So any of the fund that's expended by from the COVID grant has to be attributable to COVID of some sort, shape, or form. So IT maintenance is that there was a requirement for staff to work from home. So that's the rationale that we're using the COVID funding for IT maintenance, but that's not the case for the website maintenance. Okay, that amount is just there as if council wish to add any additional functions to the website or expand it more, it's just a placeholder that will allow council the ability to add to the website if they choose to do so.
Mayor.
Thank you. Through the chair, I appreciate you giving us the redefinition of the COVID Start grant, but other communities have used it more liberally than we have, and one could argue that us maintaining and upgrading the website has provided greater public consultation and engagement which was necessary, particularly necessary after the COVID, after experienced the early pandemic.
We can certainly look to fund that maintenance from the COVID grant.
Okay.
Thank you. So on line item 2700, which is contracted services, $55,000. Now this is fairly consistent throughout, but I was just wondering what this actually covers. These are not consultants, I suspect, are they?
So included in that $55,000 is our membership dues that we pay to GVLRA, which is Greater Victoria Labour Relations Association, as well as for our finance consultant. I'm just trying to recall off the top of my head. What else is in there? Oh, and there's another item in there that escapes me right now. But I can get you that information.
Thank you.
Councillor Donaldson, just a quick
Yeah.
question.
Yes, Councillor Shuka?
Okay, 2270 insurance. I'm suspecting there's a good explanation for this, but there's a $15,000 increase, just a little under 15,000 from 22 to 23. Any significant reason for that?
Sorry, so insurance, Councillor Shukin, I'm seeing 77,700 versus 73,500.
It's under administration and office expenses. And the code is 2270. Does anyone else?
Yes, we're in the right spot. We just, the CFO is asking, what are you comparing the 77,000 to what column?
Well, I just need the change. 2022's amount was 62,000.
Okay.
2023 was 7,700 over 7,700. I'm just curious about the increase here. Is there a singular explanation or one? Insurance always seems to go up, but I'm curious to know a little more.
So if I may, through the chair, just so why is there an increase in the insurance premiums? Was there a claim? Or was this just natural course of action with the insurance?
I will double check the actuals because there's no claims. Even if there was a claim, it doesn't go against the premium. So there's no claims last year. But let me double check the actuals and get back to you now.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so on line item 2702, resources for staff, we have a budget of $90,000, and it appears that in actuals for 2021 and year-to-date for 2022, nothing was spent. So do we need this amount, and if so, what is this for?
So the $90,000 was an expense that was approved by council. So for the actuals, it's all rolled into the wages. So it's no separated, but it's rolled into the wages under administration salary.
Mayor Little.
Yeah, wasn't that $90,000 in the 2022 budget? And I thought that was a one-time expense for 2022. I'm confused while I'm seeing it in the 2023 budget.
So that's just there again as a placeholder if should council decide to do any. So it's not a definite or particular resource, but it's just general resourcing for staff. Again, that's there as a placeholder.
Comments committee, are you wanting to keep it that high or adjust it?
Well,
Councillor Gray.
Yeah, I think we need a placeholder here just because we're discussing on a separate sheet ongoing staffing. And the numbers I recall, I don't have it open right now, but 73,000 for an assistant, something like 150,000 for a CAO. So this is a placeholder as I'm understanding it, just to show us we got a spot there we may choose to fill one way or another with either a larger number or a smaller number depending on future decisions. Don't maybe it's worth highlighting it, but I wouldn't remove it from the sheet because it gives us some notion of a staff cost likely coming our way.
Marilyn?
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Johnson?
Yes.
I would agree with Councillor Gray, let's highlight it but not remove it as yet.
Okay. Okay, and just clarification, line item 5360, kitchen supplies have doubled. Can we have just an explanation of what this line item is for? Is it dishes or coffee or?
Yeah, it's just general kitchen supplies, coffee, tea, napkins. Yeah, just general kitchen supplies. Those are the items that come to mind right now.
So we're going to double it this year because it's been 500 for the last couple of years.
So that is just based on 2022 budget.
Council, you okay with that bump up?
Yep.
Yes. Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please, Councillor Gray.
Through the chair, Sue Lynn, the legal fees,
Line.
2220, legal fees, is $20,000 now. The budget last year was $10,000. I think this is the top one we've discussed earlier, I'm not sure. Legal fees comes up a number of times. So these legal fees, what would they be for? That's for which activity?
So the legal fees are separated for each department. So this one is for general government. So you'll see again legal fees in bylaw enforcement and so on and so forth.
So would this be one, for example, for drafting bylaws?
Yes, that would be.
And so I just followed up with saying I don't know if that's going to be adequate. We've got a lot on our plate here and a lot of plans and ideas, and so to the chair, I guess the question is whether or not bumping up by $10,000 or if it should be up at $30,000.
Okay, so I have a question in regard to that, to the CFO. So we live within our budget, so we only spend up to the budget. Is there any flexibility at a later date that we could, if it did exceed that, we take it from some other place, another department, or not?
So how it would work is the budget is approved on the basis of what I call the bottom line. So for example, in general government, specifically the budget approved, you'll see the summary sheet. So you'll approve the bottom line. In this case, if we're looking at just as it is, the 2023 budget for general government will be 1.237359. So there's variations among the line items. Then as long as it's within the approved budget, then we're okay. So we will not amend the budget based on line by line basis.
Thank you.
Maybe I just ask we specially mark that one just like we've marked the staffing one to come back to it later. It really limits our ability to move forward on some of the discussions that we've had about improving our community.
Mary Lou?
Yeah, I agree, except for it doesn't. It depends on which model. If you're advocating sending every bylaw for drafting to a lawyer, that will be quite expensive. If we're asking legal advice regarding to a bylaw that is drafted in-house and with purview by the council members and them having overlook, then that's another. That's a reduced amount. I don't think we can afford, with the capacity that we have, to send every bylaw for formulation add legal services. We'd be able to take from other districts, make it our own, and then send it for legal counsel review.
So the plan is the lawyer will draft our bylaws, any bylaws amendment that we request them to do. It will take from the templates that they've developed for other municipalities and tweaking it based on their experience from the other bylaws where the holes are. So they will just take what they've done in the past. They won't rewrite from scratch. They'll take the templates and retweak, like I said, because they know that bylaw for City A, the problem area was this, and they'll change it and amend it in the bylaw. So, and also in terms of legal review, not every bylaw, you're correct, not every bylaw needs to be presented to council, legal counsel, just the ones that we know. We're going to be absolutely sure that they can stand up in court if we ever get to that point.
So I think that's where my question was, if we prioritize only a certain number of like high priority bylaws for this year and then next year be different, because we have that earmarked for every year approximately the same amount of money. Councillor Gray.
Sure, well, maybe I'll just let people know I'll keep coming back to this question as we go through the budget. Also, I'll mark it myself so that we have that discussion. I'm concerned about having the capacity in the budget to have legal assistance when we need it. So we've got good bylaws that can withstand court challenge. And I would say that my issue more is the capacity at our staff level. If we don't have capacity at our staff level, then we are going to be turning to legal assistance for a lot more times than we need to.
Okay. Any other comments from the committee on this page before I open it up to public comment? Seeing none, I ask the public to speak on the page of the general government, please.
There's a second page, general government.
There is? Sorry. Okay, we're not finished. I don't have any specific highlights on this page. Councillor Gray, you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that you can see the line 2500 business development and a $10,000 figure. So in line with other comments that have been made, gee, we didn't spend it last year, so why do we have 10,000 here again? And just to jump in front of that one, I would say that there has been some discussions about EV chargers, and previous councils has talked about using that money for EV chargers. And the discussions are ongoing, and so I would suggest we leave the money there for now. But as the budget process proceeds, we can get a look at it again a little bit later.
Okay, and to that, quite a bit of I would have to say, in speaking with the business community, a lot of them don't even know that we have this budget line item, so they may not even know what it's for, or that it could apply to an area where they have their business. And we've also discussed in previous council meetings, budget talks, grants for EV chargers. And so that's something also to explore. But I agree with you, I like the placeholder of this. Any other comments on that particular one? Mayor Little?
Not in that particular one. Moving
Okay,
on.
another one, sure.
Yeah, I was just wondering through the chair if I could have some clarification regarding the COVID-19 admin.
Yes.
What is that about? So this is 5375. On page 10.
Yep. So that is to address the shortfall of interest revenue that we've seen in the past, and also casino revenue sharing. So this is just as a top up for the shortfall in the revenues.
So that's an expense.
And so this was labeled as COVID-19 because it's going to be using some of the COVID grant money?
That's correct.
I see, okay. And then if I may, item number 2700, the elections. We don't foresee any election. Is this here as a just in case 5,000? I don't think we could even do a by-election with 5,000.
That's correct. So in the past, according to past practice, there's always been $5,000 with the exception of election years, just in case there's any by-election. But again, that is a just in case and the placeholder as well.
Councillor,
Councillor Donaldson,
yes.
one question. I go back to the Business Development Fund, which has been mentioned a number of times. My sense with this one is I feel like this is the kind of fund that needs a plan. Like even if we allocate money from the one-time grants, as opposed to like leaving it open, we budget $10,000, but we use $500. That just doesn't seem right to me. I recognize there might be some contingency amounts that we need, or there's a good project that suddenly comes, but I suspect that there's other ways of addressing it, and unless there's something specifically budgeted or known in terms of business development, that this particular one be scaled back, at least cut in half, I would say, based on the history of its use.
Committee, do you have any comments to add to Councillor Shukin's suggestion? Councillor Gray?
Hi, Councillor Shukin. I'm only suggesting keeping it there for now until we figure out whether or not we want to move ahead with these EV chargers for this particular year, and the number should become clear, and maybe it can go to zero. I'm just saying, hang tight until we find out the details. What's been going on, there's been some discussions between the district and the providers of EV chargers, and a notion of cost sharing. And so that means I got to put some money into the deal. The alternative would be to have no cost sharing, just give it over to a private company. So there's a future discussion to have about that, whether or not it's worth investing anything at all, or just handing it over to somebody else. But we can see if we can sort that out before the budget's done.
Councillor?
Sure, and sorry, Councillor Donaldson, I'm good with that. I just feel like this particular fund should be, like, we should actually designate something to use it for. And the EV chargers might be a very worthy project, but if we don't have anything, this is one it strikes me to scale back on. So,
Okay.
thank you.
Noted. Councillor, please.
I think it just kind of got forgotten in the last term, unfortunately. It was brought up a few times, but nothing really happened. I think there are things that moving forward with a little better administration of it that it could be quite useful. Things that I mentioned to me besides the EV chargers are upgrades to the bus stop cover and the bike stand that need some upgrading as far as upkeep mostly on them. Another thing is the parking plan for the village core. So, I think it's very useful to have in there. We just need to make sure to, get it used and contact the business community for their ideas as far as the use of it.
Thank you. Marilyn?
Yeah, I was just wondering, through the chair, and ask a question of our CFO. Would EV chargers not be a capital expense? Would they be their infrastructure? They're not really operating. Wouldn't that come out of capital? And I agree with Councillor Shuka that I'd like to see this in half. One of the reasons why we started our strategic priority planning was so that at some point we can align our strategic priorities with the budget. And we had talked about in our strategic planning supporting local businesses, supporting the small businesses in our community, so I can see how some of that would be used there. But I'm wondering about the EV chargers in particular. Is that not a capital?
It depends on what the cost is. I apologize, I don't have the cost for EV chargers. If it's over our capitalization level, then it would be capital. But again, this is just as a line item and placeholder, not necessarily for one item, but it's just that according to past practice, that's always been the amount that's been set aside for business core improvements.
Councillor Gray?
Just to say, I have no information on the net nature of the EV charger arrangements and what would be paid, whether it's an ongoing cost or a small capital cost. Simply, I'm looking at the records from the previous council and the notes there, and that's what I'm referring to. And only the idea of finding out a little bit more about it so we can make a decision.
Yeah, in the past, this budget actually had two projects that I know that it was invested in. One was the artistic rock work in front of the general store, and the other was the area where the bikes, there's a bike shelter right across in front of the Broken Paddle little mall there that also has a map, so there's a mapping project that went with that. So those are two projects probably in the last 10 or 15 years where this money was invested. Okay. Any other comments on the back of this page? I'll open it up to the public then, please. Mr. Smurfett?
Thank you very much. If you look at your contracted services again, we had Joe Martinego last year was charged in that account. I understand he's no longer under contract, so I suggest that that line can be significantly reduced.
Which
And
one are you, which number, Gary?
2122-2700. The CFO mentioned that there's the Greater Victoria Labour Relations Association is charged to that, and also Sam Weller is charged to it. And in the past, some of Joe Martinego's time was charged to it as well, because he was assisting the administrator. And so I would suggest that that account can be reduced from the 55,000 down to something like 30,000. When you talked about resources for staff, the 9,000 that was in that line was expended, just as was explained in the additional salaries that were paid out. I would suggest that if you're looking at those things that Councillor Gray mentioned, those are your one-timers and your add-ons that were in that package that you had a couple of weeks ago. And it'd be more appropriate to talk about them at that time, and that at this time you reduce it to a bare bones and then add up. When you talk about the business development, 2124-2500, since 2019, there's been $10,000 a year in that account. That money has never spent more than $2,000 a year. There is according to your policy, F-100.52, there is a business development reserve fund, okay? And all unspent money in those accounts was supposed to go into that reserve fund. So there should be something like $30,000, $25,000 sitting in that account. And I don't see why, with that money sitting there, you'd have to turn around and budget another $10,000 this year. I mean, tell me if I'm wrong here, Sue Lynn, but the purpose of the reserve account is to feed into these things, and that if you decided to make a $20,000 study, you could tap into the reserve funds and add it in throughout the year. And I don't believe there's a need to tax for $10,000 now. If you tax for $1,000, you leave it as a line item, and you can top it up by taking the money out of the reserve fund later in the year with a direction from council. And the same applies to legal fees. There is a reserve fund in that policy set up for legal fees. And I've asked in the past for a copy of what is in all of the reserve funds, but an up-to-date copy that would allow you to better understand, I would suggest, where you can top up these things. The idea of the reserve fund is to accommodate the ups and downs, the big snowstorms, and when you have a small year for snow clearing, you throw money into it, a big year, you pull it out. The same with the legal fees reserve funds and the business development funds and that. Thank you very much. I hope I don't sound too pain in the ass here.
Feedback is important. Thank you.
I never say that up here.
Mayor Little?
Yeah, actually, I think that would be really helpful if we could have a list of the reserve funds, so the legal fund, the business development fund, the policing fund, the roads, all of that, so that we know where we can pull from. I know that you have some comments regarding what we can use for what, and maybe you could explain that.
So I'm just going to speak a little bit about the legal reserve. So the legal reserve, like Mr. Smurfett said, is the intent of that is for any unexpected expenditures. We're hoping we don't need to use it, but in case we do have that reserve. So going forward for legal expenses, it's something that we can plan for it. So that's why it's a line item as opposed to draw from the reserve. Because heaven forbid, again, like I said, I'm hoping we don't need to tap into it, but if there's a big suit that's brought out against us, then we do have that reserve to fund that particular suit.
Marilyn?
I appreciate that, but it's hard to rely on that when we don't know what we have there. So that's why it would be nice to know what we have in our reserve funds. For instance, in the past, we have borrowed from the policing funds to pay for the school. It'd be really nice to have a tangible figure, just so we know as a council and as a committee where we sit with our reserve funds in each of those different categories.
And Councillor Donaldson, I would echo that as well. It would be great to get an update on our reserves and a background on how they should be used. And this was actually done in 2021, as I recall. And so I think it's a very helpful document. So might just even need to be updated. So.
I can certainly include that in the for our next meeting.
Thank you, that would be helpful. Okay, so moving on to the next department, which is the fire department. Questions? Councillor Gray?
Maybe I did, just before we jump to the next one,
Okay.
Mayor Little mentioned the strategic plan.
Yes.
And I just want to suggest that we move that process along so that it matches up with our budget process so we could, one informs the other as best we can. I know Councillor Shugan's working on that at the moment. And I guess I'm just suggesting we crank it along so we can get it going.
It was sent out to all of us, and I'm tardy in responding to it too.
And the other question that I guess is general, so just to raise it now, it's not general revenue, but the inflation rate we're using is 2%. And I'm wondering if, I don't know what it should be, but that's something, if I may ask through the chair,
Yes.
we would adjust that number presumably as we're working through and seeing what's going on in other areas and sort of settle on something in the end. It's still a number that's movable, I imagine.
Yes, Councillor Gray, you're correct. So 2%, in my opinion, is very conservative.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely, some items were inflated by 2%. I would suggest that at the end of the day, we're going to see some more or some less. So we're being very conservative. Just trying to be a bit caution, but I am a little hesitant about just using 2%, just given this. You've seen what the inflation has been last year and continues to be.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay, so in line item, so we're on the fire department page, and line item 2325 is the FDM software maintenance. There's not been any expenses on this for since 2021. Is this just an upgrade or of the programming platform? Or?
I'll have to defer that to the fire chief.
Yes, please.
Good evening. So the FDM software maintenance, that was, the title of the code should be changed to an RMS maintenance. FDM used to be the name of our records management system when we were through Langford Dispatch. That's now been changed, and the reason we didn't have any last year specific to that was because we didn't have one. So we're in the process of getting a new one currently, and we do expect to have those same maintenance fees moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
Would you like me just to stay up here?
Yeah, that would be great. This is a big department.
Yes.
You might have a lot of exercise if we have a lot of questions. So can you explain to me the training materials and supplies? This would be line 5300. I thought I saw other line items that similar wording. But if you could explain that to us, please.
Sure. Again, my personal thought is that these titles can be changed and updated. They haven't been changed for several years.
Okay.
So you'll see some items in here that haven't been used that are blank. It's just because they haven't been removed for whatever reason.
Okay.
So how training used to work is we used to travel over to the mainland all the time. So we had a separate line item for mileage and travel expenses, and then the course fees, and then training materials and supplies. So those are the three main categories. The two in between, the fire course instruction expenses and the sharing recovery, that was something that was put in place with previous accounting that I would need to get more information on. I don't know exactly what those two items are.
Okay.
So the other three items have all just been training, travel to and from, course fees, and then just training supplies and equipment that we need here. Because we don't travel as much anymore, that really relates to the mileage and travel. It tends to be the food. We get lots of firefighters here when we have food. So that's what that is.
Okay.
Training materials and supplies, that's up substantially because books, it's all about manuals. And we tend to have to buy new ones in the set, a dozen or so at a time. And they're, for example, our regular train manual used to be $80, is now $180. So, and we have to renew those and buy new ones every 4 to 6 years. So that's unfortunately what's happened.
Okay, so that explains why, so the other two line items there, the fire course instruction expenses and the fire course sharing recovery has been merged.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, and the kitchen, more food.
The kitchen tends to be more for, we hold a lot of community events at the fire hall. People come in for coffee, and a couple examples are sometimes the scouts will come in, the news meets there. We have ongoing meetings that happens that are not necessarily fire department related. So all of the coffee, sometimes we buy coffee cups, food, milk, cream, that kind of thing, all comes out of that account. When we have all those, the double burner dishes, when we need to buy new ones of those, coffee urns, that's what comes out of that account.
Okay.
The society, just to be clear, because I know there is food and fruit you see around there, all that comes from the society.
Okay, thank you. And a question for the CFO. The hydro has really increased quite a bit, or the proposal for increasing the budget is significant. It's almost $3,000. Are we expecting to use that much more hydro?
So that line item is just based on the 2022 budget. It's one of those items that personally I would be hesitant to cut. It's just because it's.
So it's been 9,000 for a few years, but on average we're using 5,000, 5,800.
We can certainly lower that if the community wishes.
Committee, thoughts?
Isn't there supposed to be a huge increase in hydro coming down the pipe?
I don't know. It's the Pineapple Express out there today is pretty warm out. So I'm not sure if we're going to really get a winter. I don't know. I have not heard. When I see these sorts of things, I actually, when I went through all of the budgets, I looked at how much we pay on hydro and phones and that with all the departments. And we're paying $32,000 a year just in hydro with our buildings. So things to think about in the future for, thinking of alternative energy. And that, with the school, at some point when we replace the fire hall, that sort of thing. This building has roofs, but it's got trees that interfere. The museum, when they put the solar panels on, the district bought the solar panels, they haven't had to pay for electricity in years, so it's been really beneficial. So things that we need to think about for the future for sure. Councillor Gray.
Through the chair, Chief, I just wanted to ask about the course seminar fees and training materials. Are they sufficient?
Boy, that's a tough question. Is it ever, yes. The reason it's so much more this year was because we really had a lot of catch up to do. We had recertification. The cost to do courses is increasing significantly. So do keep that, that's why I did ask for an increase in the budget this year, just to help keep that moving. And that is one of the motivators for keeping our recruits here. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Mayor Lou?
Through the chair, if I can ask a question of the fire chief. So on item number 5400 under 2242 BC wildfires, so this is not revenue, this is expenses. Can you explain that one? 54,274.
Yes, it's a long-winded explanation though. I
That's
don't
okay.
actually understand this expense specific. Again, that was a previous accountant, so I'm not sure why that was in there. It's not something that was approved per se as that amount of money. When the money comes in for BC Wildfire, we, the district bills out to BC Wildfire, and it's a full lump amount, and that covers the engine and the personnel on it. So then when that money comes back, the payroll goes out to the individual firefighters. So in 2021, we were out there for quite a while and we made a significant amount of money. And I'm assuming, I don't have the numbers, this number doesn't look terribly familiar to me, that there was a significant amount of money that was paid out to all the firefighters because we were out there for so long. The district also had a large sum of money that they received in compensation for the apparatus that were out. So without knowing where that number came from, I can't explain it exactly.
Okay.
Now, typically what happens, in the past, we have also purchased some gear that was for deployment purposes. Not $300,000 worth, okay? But you know, shirts and pants for the crews that are going up there. So we have purchased that to come out, the expectation is to come out of any monies that we would make on deployment.
Okay.
Right? So I apologize, I don't know what that number is exactly, but I can work with the interim CAO and get that recce out for you.
If, through the chair, if I could recommend, could you, as chair, along with the CFO and the fire chief, work together on this, not only for what we had just talked about, but also to reclassify some of these, like the SDM. They have been upgraded in many years. It's hard to comment on something when it's not congruent with our current understanding. And then the other question that I had was in the revenue section. So we have fire department, other revenue. Is this the deployment? Sorry, this is 1590070.
It might be, yes, those numbers look a bit more reasonable.
Okay. Okay, so that would be some of the things to refine when you meet with the chair and the CFO. That would be great. Let's see. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Gray?
Sounds like a good idea, just to help us out though, a little map to show us, we'll lose track of the historical information if we change the titles here, so a little map to go with it, just so we know what happened.
Marilyn?
Yeah, I was wondering if I could ask a very practical question. So is there anything in this budget that you see can be cut? And I'm asking that, I know that's not a fair question, but I'm asking it anyways because, as you know, we're under considerable fiscal restraints this year with the policing costs. I know that you often ask for things that would be great to have. Is there anything here that in your professional opinion can be postponed for a couple of years or deleted altogether?
I will take that into consideration. I'll take the budget back and take a good look at it.
Okay.
I would like to, however, suggest that the operational budget is really quite refined as it is.
Okay.
The one-times and the capital, there are maybe some workarounds that we can do for sure.
Okay.
But this, especially because our call volume has increased substantially, we've gone from 450, 480 calls to over 600 calls. So that significantly increases the impact on everything that we do here. So right now, I'd like to suggest that it's pretty tight as it is, but let me go back and also can make an effort.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, so-
Councillor Donaldson?
Yes, Councillor Shukin.
Through you. Chief, are there any operating expenses connected with like the general poor state of the building? And you can answer very briefly if you need to. Like, I've noticed, of course, when you walk into the hall, sometimes there's little pans or collector things collecting water. But any cost that you're incurring from that right now?
I think that you might see some higher hydro or heating costs potentially. I know that there's some kind of leak in our gas system because it kind of smells like gas sometimes in there. So, we're trying to get that, it's like a plug in the dike every once in a while and, until something else happens. But yeah, it's just lipstick and, Band-Aids trying to fix things and make it look pretty until such time as the new hall can be visualized. I will note that the reason that their building went over this year is we were able to get it fixed for that roof leak. I think it was around $5,000 to be able to temporarily fix that. So we'll see if it goes through the entire year.
Okay.
Might have to spend another
Well, thank you
$5,000.
for managing through the issues that we do need to address in the community in time. So
Yes,
thank you.
thank you.
Councillor Gray.
I hate to say it, but if we're smelling gas in the building, we should be on that. Is this, you mean natural gas?
No.
No, well, yes, it is, but it's just sometimes when, the burner constantly runs, it's just it definitely,
It's a very old
Yeah.
apparatus in the kitchen, having worked with that, and that is a smell that's quite common in older kitchens. Comes from the pilot light most often. It's not actual leak, it's just not, it's just a residual thing. It's not like if you light a match and...
You got me
blow
excited
over.
here.
No,
Pilot lights burn the gas, they don't release the gas.
Yeah.
Because you're just talking about the kitchen.
Yeah, it's the kitchen, it's just the main room though, that's the problem. So when you walk in, sometimes you can smell it.
I'll call for maintenance then,
Yeah,
please,
perfect.
thank you.
Go out the
It's an
burner.
awful smell, actually. Any other questions, committee, for this page?
If I may,
Yes.
we just got another $30,000 grant for some additional equipment to go on our new Engine 9, so that's very exciting as well.
Okay.
So would this be line item 7,500, where it's 35,000 every year? We don't have to, we can scratch that off.
Well, I don't think so, but I think it would be more down in line item, where are the grants? Down in the 2249 kind of area.
Oh, it has 7601, those are
Those
first
are
one
community,
grants.
yeah, but actually the 7600,
Yes, sorry, okay,
yeah, and that's just a carryover from a previous grant, but
okay, great, awesome.
we'll be able to save a little bit of money on our capital with that grant. So,
So back to the line item 7,500, where we've got 35,000 every year. The exact amount, even the year to date, is the exact amount. So are we actually spending it right to the
Sorry, what line item, sorry?
7,500 under minor fire
Oh,
capital?
so this is another one of those, I'm not exactly sure how it works.
Okay.
So we have a capital budget. So for years, we had $25,000 to be able to spend on capital items, which as you can see from last year's SCBA purchase, that just wasn't enough. So a few years ago, we went ahead and made a 20-year plan and a 10-year plan. So we have that. So we provide that to you guys. So you see, in some years it's 60, some years it's 5. So I think that the way this is working is that 35,000 is moved out of our operation into the capital on a regular basis to keep that capital tool or equipment fund at an amount that we can actually cover the expenses that we have planned out over that 20-year period.
Okay. Councillor,
Just wondering, and I know we talked about last time, so it's probably the capital, but I was wondering, is there any way that 35,000 could be used for the quest for the new ATV?
So just to be clear, there's a 20-year plan, and that 35,000 goes into that. So it's almost like, I don't want to say it's a reserve, but it's a fund that handles all of our capital. So we know exactly how much we're spending every year, and the ATV is not in that. That's a replacement. Yeah. Good try, but no. Sorry.
Marilyn?
Yeah, I was just going to say congratulations and thank you for that grant application for the 30,000. That will help offset quite a bit of the equipment, right?
Yeah, so just to be clear, that also is for specified equipment that was for the new engine, so we didn't have to pay for it. It will come out of the capital budget area.
Right.
It won't affect our operational.
No, but what I'm saying is what we're dealing with is the whole budget. We're dealing with the whole budget for the district. If we can save in one area, we have chance to spend or save in other areas. Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Brady, you had a- no? Okay. Okay, so, if no other questions for the chief regarding the fire department on these 2 pages, I'd open it up to the public.
Don't go too far. Thank you. When you're talking about the 35,000 for firefighters equipment, I think, correct me if I'm wrong here, Chief, but in the residual, doesn't it just get transferred down to the very bottom of that sheet, which is transferred to fire equipment reserve? So in 2021, they transferred 75,000 into it, of which the
Yes.
25,000 component in that budget, plus extra funds that council in its wisdom thought should go to the equipment reserve.
Are you talking 0500?
Yeah.
I believe that's the apparatus.
Okay, so there's a separate reserve account for apparatus from the reserve account for equipment? Because it says fire equipment reserve, and then up above this 35,000 is firefighters equipment. Yeah, different, probably should be 2 different reserve accounts so that it's an accounting, so you know
Yeah.
if we're short this year, you top it up next year.
It's something we're working on, the new accounting procedures.
Good luck.
Yes.
The other question that I had was on the Fire Smart program, we have expenditures listed here of $316,000 in 2022. I couldn't see where there's an offsetting grant anywhere for it.
There is, actually.
Where?
Well, the money just hasn't, it's there. So much as the CFO was mentioning, is that what happens is it sits in another account. So we actually have 3 Fire Smart grants. One was for $297,000. One was for another 230, I believe. Don't quote me on the numbers, Gary.
No, I'm just writing down 3 grants.
And then there was another one that was around 130. So we did receive quite a big chunk of money for Fire Smart, and we submitted one. So what happens is we spend the money. Unfortunately, we front the money until we get that, we submit it, and then they bring the money back. And so we're in the process right now, in the next probably 2 months, of submitting all those final expenditures and getting that money back in. So that will be leveled out and should come back to 0.
So I guess my point is that if we don't show it in this budget as revenue, it paints a misleading picture of where we're going to stand because we've already spent the money. Like it's balancing. It should be somewhere in this budget I would submit for 2023 is a revenue line item, as the chief explained, for each of these 3 grants, since we've already spent the money in 2022. That way it gives a more fair picture of where you're going to be. Otherwise, you'll wake up one day and find out that, geez, we didn't have to have an 11.7% increase because we've got grants of 300 and some thousand come in. Okay.
No, it's in there.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for being nice, Gary.
Any comments, committee? Mayor Little?
Just the extra comment that in the list that we're going to ask for reserves funds for the apparatus and the equipment as well. So that should be subdivided for the fire department.
Did you want me to stay up here for the emergency measures?
Yes, please. Yeah, it's not very good. Okay, so moving on to the emergency services page. We have a line item 2760, Emergency Social Services Program, and we've had expenses of, in 2021, of $930, and in 2022, year-to-date jumped up to $3,400, and now we're budgeting $1,500. Is this adequate?
No. We run our entire emergency program on 25,000, right?
Okay.
We get $40,000, we've gotten $40,000 in the past several years in grants, which has helped us out significantly. So, no, it's never going to be enough. The reason that we've had more this year is because we've had a couple of last year's, because we've had a couple of displaced individuals, and that's on us. So we support them for a couple of days. Some money we get refunded, some we don't, back from the province. So there are just needs that we have that we don't always have grant money for. So we basically separated the funding that we have into the basic 5 categories: emergency support services, the emergency communications, search and rescue, and our, what do they call it, our neighborhood emergency preparedness. And again, there's very old line items here that should be removed. We haven't used them in years.
Okay.
And, you know, these go up and down, unfortunately, just as we need them to. I would suggest that some of these items actually should go into, we'll have to take a look at the line items, should be actually allocated to the grant.
Comments, committee? Mayor Lou?
Yeah, I'm just looking down at 2256 and 7519, 7520 and 7521. So this is year to date. It wasn't budgeted for in 2022. This is minor capital expenses, but we don't have anything in the 2023. Perhaps this was unexpected through the chair to the CFO.
So those, you're correct, Mayor Little, there's the grants that were not budgeted for because we had no expectation of the grants. And so these are the expenses to go with the grants.
These are expenses from this is grant money.
That's right.
This is
going out. Yeah, so we have the grants that will come in to cover these.
Okay.
And some of them should have been received, so.
So we've got, it's about $52,000 or so, $1,000, and then we've got up here in the EOC grants is 72,000. Sorry, in item at the very top 0200, EOC grants 72 versus about 52, 54.
Looks like you're up about $20,000 and, $13.
Okay.
Yeah. Because that's how much we got in on grants in that time period. That was probably from a previous one as well. I'm not 100% sure how accounting took care of all those grants. So it just doesn't make, I agree, it should be easier to read so that I know what grants have been received. I don't always know when a grant payment has been paid either. So it would be nice to have that as well, which we're working on.
Okay. Thank you.
I'd also like to just add, if I could, on the, if we go to the building, what's that? Building maintenance at 2710. No. Oh, there it is. It's community promotion. I'm not sure why, but one of these items, we had a heat pump that was installed that was actually supposed to be in a previous year's grant, but because they didn't send the right documentation to pay the invoice, it bumped over into January. So it got put into this year's budget instead of the grant money for last year. So that unfortunately didn't get processed correctly.
Did we lose it? Oh, sorry, through the chair, did we lose the grant?
No, we just didn't, it just didn't get allocated to the grant.
Okay.
So, and it got taken out of our regular money.
Hey, in regards to the communication, or the community promotion 2210 line item, we seem to have a consistent budget of 1,500, with the exception that we actually spent 6,000 in 2022. Is 1,500 sufficient? And the reason I'm asking is some things that I have noticed in the last couple of years is, and accolades to your department and the Public Works, is that we're saving our residents quite a bit as opposed to empowering them to be more self-sufficient, whether it's flooding or snow removal from the driveways or whatever. Could we not maybe do more promotion? And now that especially that COVID is opening things up, so we used to do things, you used to host things like first aid and you know, like once a month on a Monday or something like that. Preferably not on Monday because we don't want them here, but if we could do something like that more, is 1,500 enough? And there's a discrepancy here, so I'm just wondering.
Yeah, and again, I'll have to look at that line item too, because there might have been items that should have gone into the grant funding, and that happens sometimes as far as the coding.
Okay.
So 1,500, the community promotion to me anyway is really our information sessions, our newsletter that we send out, our emails, that sort of thing, is ways to get information out there. And that's typically, so 1,500 normally is sufficient.
Okay.
We will be starting up those information sessions again, and certainly empowering the community is great.
Well, and also with, you know, getting more pod leaders and that sort of thing. I don't think people realize that we need pod leaders.
Well, we do what we can. There's only, you know, so much we can do to get the information out there, and yeah, but I at this point I think that budget should be sufficient.
Okay. Marilyn.
Okay, so along the building maintenance line, this is for the emergency services 2251 and 2710. We consistently budgeted for 4,000, but really we haven't spent more than $500. Is there something that we should be aware of in terms of building maintenance that's going to come forward in 2023? That's my first question. And then second question is not rhetorical, but sort of futuristic looking. If we move to building a new fire hall at some point, if we amalgamate or combine the emergency operations center into the fire hall, do you see a decrease in the costs or an increase in the costs? Not by that amalgamation word is not what, it's just having them housed under the same roof. Can you see any savings in that? Budget-wise?
Yeah, short answer would be yes, right? We don't need to have duplication of, you know, an office up there and pencils up there and then pens and pencils down here. It makes sense for it to be protective services as a whole. The EOC, the Emergency Operations Center, should be housed inside the fire department. Quite often, most of our responses, take a windstorm or a rainstorm, flooding, that sort of thing, is done under a DOC, which is a Department Operations Center, which is managed in the fire hall anyway. So combining the two definitely would reduce costs. What they would look like, I mean, I would take out your phones, take out your building maintenance, take out office supplies, those type of things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then the item with the building maintenance, is there something that we don't know about that's coming forward in 2023?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
I'd suggest we, to the chair, that we decrease that then. We've got to start decreasing somewhere.
Yeah.
Decrease that.
Okay.
Maybe not remove it though.
So may I suggest we reduce it to 1,000? Given that the expenses have been about $340, fairly consistent, $350 to $400 consistently. Comments?
Yeah, when you have low cost for many years, then you might expect a higher cost coming. Maintenance can be like that, but I take your point otherwise.
It would, to your point, we do have a relatively new hot water tank. We have a relatively new washroom in there because we had some flooding, insurance covered new carpet in that. LED lighting is covered under a grant that we have, so we'll get that upgrading, and we have a new heat pump that's all fully paid for. So I think it's relatively safe. It's a Panabo construction, so I think we're relatively safe to reduce it.
Kind of my thought. Yes, so everybody in agreement that we can reduce this to 1,000?
I'm in agreement.
Thank you. Any other comments on this page of emergency services? This one actually feels like a pretty tight ship. Okay, open up to the public, any comments? No? Okay. Move on to building department, the other side of the page. Mary Lou?
I'll start.
Okay.
So in terms of our revenue, so we had revenue in 2022 projected year-to-date of 114 and 102. So it was projected based on the information that we have available, over 100,000, but in the 2023 it's only 89,000. I'm just wondering, one would think that it would be about the same. And then another question that I have for the CFO is in terms of the building department, the contracted services year-to-date in 2022 was 34,475. This is line item 2,700. But then in 2023 budget, it goes way down to 5,000. I'm just wondering what is going on there, and also with the building permits.
So through the chair, so the building permit revenue is just status quo based on budget. As to be expected, the revenue is going to fluctuate. So we're just budgeting it based on the past 2 years, roughly 2022 for sure, and an increase over 2021. So that's something that's very hard to predict. So we're just going with the budget from 2022. That's for the revenue. And for the expenses, contracted services, we did not hire our building inspector until June of 2022. So, and our previous building inspector left November 2021. So in the period that we were not able to fill the building inspector position, we engaged the contracted services. That's why you see that almost $35,000 for 2022. So going forward for 2023, we're not expecting to use as extensively the contracted building inspectors as much as we did in 2022.
Mary Lou?
And so was that for a 4-month period or so? I'm just wondering, we should have saved.
That was for 5.5 months.
So
6 months or so.
Okay, so we should have saved on the 6 months worth of salary as well if we didn't have a building inspector in that position.
No, the complement for the building inspector, if you're looking at it between 2022 and 2021, the complement went up for 2022 to full time, compared to part time for 2021.
Any other comments, committee? Councillor Gray?
Sorry, I just want to make one here for 1 minute. 2022, sorry, I'm just looking at something here. Okay. Sorry. Okay, I'll withdraw my comment here. I was just looking at the, I thought there was a difference or discrepancy between the building inspection reports in terms of permits and what's showing here, but I think there's more to it than I can actually see right now. So, sorry, I thought I had noticed that before, but I'm not sure. So,
Okay.
I'll hold on. Anyway,
okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Gray, did you have a comment?
Certainly, just a question about the training and education conference and seminars. Wanting to be sure that's a sufficient dollar value. it's the same as last year and the same as the year before, when I guess we had a lower complement, and or use of contract services. That's gonna be good enough, through the chair. Susan, any idea, is that, you're happy with that?
I'll double check again with the the building staff. Is again, we want to make sure there's some courses that will be required for the building inspector, so I will double check with him.
Thank you.
So I have a question about that. So when we hire somebody, do we hire them with the qualifications that we need, or do we hire them and then train them?
Oh, I get it.
No, that's my question for you. It's a question for the CFO, please.
So it depends on the applicants that we get. So just as a note, what I know from our current building inspector, the recruitment is it took a very, very long time to be able to find him to fill the position, and that was just the reality of what we had to go through to find a building inspector. But actually, my understanding is that at one point when the competition was run, we received no applications.
Thank you. Did you have a comment, Councillor Gray?
Yeah, sorry, I think the ongoing training also relates to upgrading required as the building code has changed. There's probably requirements for the professional people to have a certain amount of training. I'm not sure of that, but I believe that sort of training is necessary for us.
Yeah, I understood that. I was more referring to when we hire somebody, we hire them with the full complement, and then as time goes on, if they've only been here a month and we're training them, or 6 months and we're training them, then that was where I was going with that. I do understand the ongoing. Any other comments, committee? Mayor Little?
Just predicting questions from the community regarding hiring a full-time building inspector, where before we had a part-time building inspector. Can you comment, Sue Lynn, regarding what that individual will also be doing to make up the 1.0 FTE position compared to the 0.80 FTE position that was previously?
So part of the other duties for the building inspector is, if I can call it, I don't want to say level 1, but really, and again, if I say simple, that's not an indication that it's simple, but only he can handle. But it's some bylaw matters that could be easily resolved by simply having a conversation. So that's what I mean by having a simple. But he also takes care of tree cutting permits, and soil deposits for the smaller amounts. So any amount that are larger goes to our engineer. So those are additional duties that our building inspector takes care of.
Thank you.
That's good to know. Thank you. I'll open it up to the public. Any comments on this section of the budget, the building department?
Thank you. I'm just wondering, Sue Lynn, under the building permit revenue, we have a year-to-date of 114,000, and yet a projection of only 102,000. I'm just wondering why the projection doesn't match the year-to-date.
So those are to adjust for deferred revenue.
For what?
For deferred revenue, so we've collected the revenue, but we haven't performed the work. So that's why you see the projections less than the actuals.
But you've collected the revenue, so it's revenue.
No, but not if we haven't done the work. It has to be deferred to 2023.
Well, based on that, then the budget of 89,000 should be higher, shouldn't it?
We could bump it up, and that'll be so.
Well, I'm just looking at, there's a $12,000 difference. So if you add it to what you had for 2021 or 2022, that would make your 2023 budget 100,000, 101,000, something like that.
Possibly, but if you look back to the actuals for 2021, so again, we are basing it based on our historical data. So in 2021, you'll see it was almost $89,000. So we're choosing to be more conservative to budget for revenue in case, again, it's one of those things that it's not possible to predict. So it's just going with a more conservative of $89,000 that was used for 2021.
Okay, I won't push it. Thank you.
Mary Lou?
Can we get clarification on that, because that doesn't make sense to me. So, year-to-date, 2022, the total revenue was 140, the year-to-date was 114, but we're losing the value of the 2022 projection, which we're basing our 2023 budget on, of 103. And so how can that be? If we actually receive revenue year-to-date, it should be at least equivalent to what we're projecting.
So the year-to-date is actually money that's been received, not necessarily revenue that's been earned. So to the point, if that happens at the end of the year, for example, applicant comes in and puts an application, pays the fee, and the whole inspection period takes him over 2 years, so it's December 2022 and sometime into January 2023 or whatever, 2023. So the fact that we took in the whole permit fees, we didn't earn the whole permit fee because we only provided the inspection service in December 2022, and the rest of it will be provided in 2021. So we deferred the revenue that we've actually collected, but we haven't earned.
Okay.
Councillor Gray?
Yeah, so I think that's just following the accounting rules, is how you apportion the money. And I see us being stick with $89,000 because that's been the historical amount of building permits required. Could be higher, could be lower.
That's correct. So if one of the items to come forward to the committee is for the one-time building fee review. So there's a possibility that I will have projections for the expected building revenue under the new bylaw, proposed bylaw review. So of course that number, when I have the number, that will be inserted in here.
Mary Little?
And then the depreciation values we'll have at some point. It's always helpful to have those nested in at some point, so we know where we are.
Yes, those will be populated.
So, say it again?
Yes, those will be populated, so you'll have those numbers.
Okay, great.
So line item 5220, the municipal truck is 3,000. Is this to cover insurance and maintenance, gas? What is it specifically for?
Yes, those are all the things that you have mentioned, Councillor Dalton. So anything associated with running the truck.
Okay, thank you. And is the van included in this particular department, or is that a different department?
I'm not sure. I believe it is, but I can't say 100% definite yes. I can look into that.
I see it's back in the parking lot. So that means it's fixed?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we can carpool. Any other comments about the building department? No?
That's from here, thank you.
Okay, and anyone from the public? No? Okay. Bylaw enforcement? So on line item 2221, or 1100 I should say, the next column, bylaw salaries. And then we have other bylaw contracted services and CRD contracted services. Are these three different people, or what is the definition of the three services?
So the bylaw wages are just the wages. That's all. That consists of part of the building inspector's wages, so it's split between the various departments. And also there's other staff. It's not just building inspector. And the CRD contract services is just that, CRD contract services. And if there's any, the 5,000 is just a placeholder again.
Sorry, was that a case of overage?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is that one of these cleanups that we're gonna actually merge those two lines, so?
We don't usually merge them because the CRD contracted services is specific to what they charge us, and the other one is just for any things that, any other bylaw enforcement related matters that council may want to pursue. So it's just again a placeholder for the $5,000.
Okay. Councillor Shukin?
Yeah, hi, through you, Councillor Johnson. I recall asking for an explanation of the bylaw expenses last year, and what I seem to recall being told by Mr. Weller is that the bylaw, the budget amount for human resources, it's split between a number of people in the department, and it might be the building inspector, and it might be some of the staff. And I just, maybe I could get further clarification on that. And I know that the CRD contract is for the CRD. Sorry, I don't know that, but I believe that's the case. Any further background on that, Susan? Am I correct in what I just said?
Sorry, so I just heard the part about the CRD contracted services, so you're correct. And the bylaw services salaries is, as I mentioned earlier, it comprises several employees. Their time is split among departments based on the duties that they perform.
Okay. Okay. Can I ask though, and I'm not trying to suggest any other administrative burden, but are those hours tracked in any level when they are on specific files or paid site visits or whatever? Is there an accounting of those hours?
For the bylaw salaries?
Yes.
It's percentage of the total wages.
Okay.
So we don't track it by file number or case number.
Okay. Great, thank you. There's maybe, as we move along in future years, this is maybe something I'd like to take a closer look at, but thank you very much.
Okay.
One other thing, just I believe that the CRD's contract with Machosen would have to be, it expires at the end of the year. Is that correct?
No, that's not correct. I don't remember exactly what year that expires, but it does not expire, or it didn't expire in 2022, so it's still in effect.
Okay, great, thank you.
Did you have a question, Marla?
Yeah, through the chair, the bylaw salaries, so that item 1100, the 2023 budget is 89,600. In the projection is the same as a year to date in 2022, which is 75. Does that account for the QP salary wages that we're obligated to? So this is a real figure, 89,600. It's not necessarily just projected.
So all the wages have been adjusted for the QP increase.
And so that's why there's an increase from 75 to 89.
I can get a breakdown for you of, for the committee for the 89,000, but why don't I do that? I'll just get the breakdown for you.
Thank you. Councillor Gray?
Just want to respond to Councillor Shukin's question. To some degree, when you have a staff with split duties and things like that, the split in percentages will be arbitrary at a certain point. You're simply trying to allocate the dollars across the different budgets. But as long as that's done and the numbers add up at the bottom, you're good to go. But you need to assign them somewhere in the thing. So whether or not a person is assigned 66% or 67% on a certain work, it's just a choice in order to get the numbers on the paper so we can see them. So I wouldn't dig too much into it in the sense that it's, again, an accounting issue. I want to ask a question, though, about the bylaw legal. We jump it up from the 2022 budget from $15,000 up to $35,000. And it seems to me, becoming more aware of what it costs to go after serious bylaw problems, this number of $35,000 may need to climb to, a couple $100,000 or something. Like, it's a very small amount of money if some of the commitments made during the election time are to be fulfilled. And I don't know what to do with that. I just want to point out $35,000 might deal with one problem.
And I think that our CFO said we actually had a pretty hefty reserve as well.
For unexpected issues, not if we're in fact planning to have a sort of run of business, whether or not that impacts this year or next year, whenever. And I'm not suggesting there are a million different cases, but 35 grand is inadequate.
Well, it is double from the previous years. Any other comments, committee? Committee, do you want to leave it at 35,000, reduce it, or increase it? Any comments in that regard?
I don't disagree with what Councillor Gray is saying in terms of the potential need and some of the complexity. I'm hesitant to increase it any further, but I would like to keep it at this level.
Okay, I agree with that. Yes, Councillor.
So that's kind of one case this year, that sort of thing?
That may be the case, yes.
It depends on how bad the infraction is, I suppose. Okay, any more comments on the bylaw enforcement department? Anybody from the public like to make a comment?
Just on that, it's not about how bad the infraction is, it's more how bad does someone want to push back if there is an infraction, right? It's not so, like if you're chasing people, it doesn't really matter, but when someone's like, I'm not, that bylaw doesn't apply to me, then they're going to hold you up for a week in court and there's 40,000 gone real quick.
Thank you.
Through the chair, I don't disagree, Eric. It was just the issue of not chasing after. I wasn't suggesting increasing the chase after every little problem, but rather when there's a big issue, environmental or otherwise, that we talked about previously. But good point, thank you.
Okay, so turn the page over to policing. Councillor Gray.
Yeah, so I have some notes on this, but it seems to me that we're still meeting with the province to negotiate the results here, so that we should probably just pass by this particular budget at the moment until we finish those negotiations with the provincial government.
Any other comments from the committee on that? Mayor Lynn?
Just to note that using the police reserve, and that's what it's there for, is to use it over time. We may want to readjust some of these numbers for 2023, 2024, 25, and 26 to help us with that phase-in process. But if we knew what was exactly in the police reserve, then we could allocate 300, whatever, 200 would help offset that police costs that we're going to incur this year because we've gone over the level of 5,000.
Okay, so we've talked about reserves a couple of times, so perhaps we could have a report on reserves for our next special finance meeting.
Yes, yeah, we will have a
Great.
schedule of the reserves.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Gray, I have one question. I do recall sitting in on the budget workshop last year when policing was talked about it, and the fact that we do collect the police tax at present, or we did in 2022, but there was a big discrepancy between what was said we collected and then what was actually collected, almost to the tune of $100,000. And it's interesting that the budget is not actually, or that revenue is not accounted for in the previous lines, but through you, Chair, Sue, is there any reason why the amount was about almost $100,000 lower than thought?
Sorry, Councillor Shukin, I'm not following where the...
Is that line item 200, Councillor Shukin?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
So I think it's between 2023 and 2024, is that what you're saying, the
No,
discrepancy?
the budget that we had for 2022 last year, I distinctly remember being set as $400,000 in police tax that we would be collecting. But the year to date, the projection is $100,000 less. So I'm just curious as to why it is almost $100,000 less. Do we?
So, and for the budget process, there's no use of PILP towards the police tax. So when you see that, if you add those two, 308,000 and 144,000, it's more than 400,000, but that is the reason that it wasn't split between what's collected and what we received as part of PILT. Does that answer your question, Councillor Shuken?
A little bit. I'll leave it for now. Yeah, just maybe it was too round and high a number to, I don't know, believe that was going to come to pass. But I think it was a surprise to many that we actually did collect the police tax, and so anything in further was going to be, we already were collecting that tax. So. And we will be collecting even more as we go along. So I will leave this, and I agree we should just keep this discussion for when we have more information. Thank you.
So on that, we will move to the, should we maybe stop here? It's, we got another meeting in about 30 minutes. And there's quite a bit of material still to cover.
Yeah, I think I need to stop and get a bite to eat and just get ready for the next meeting.
It's a good idea.
Okay. Okay, so on page 3 of the report, the CFO has asked us to, given us some options, and so I would ask that we move that the committee direct staff to remove or add the projects or initiatives that we've discussed thus far. So I need a mover and a seconder.
I'll move that motion. Sure.
Moved by Mayor Little, second. By Councillor F. All in favor?
I'm in favor.
Thank you, carried. And so that's all for this evening's special finance agenda. And I would ask a move to for the meeting to be adjourned, please. Moved by Councillor Shuken, seconded by Mayor Little. All in favor? Carried.
Okay.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Question, please. When will you be picking up where you left off today?
The next scheduled meeting is, what is the date for it? Do we have a date?
Yeah, the next scheduled meeting is on the 21st.
21st of February.
Thank you.
I'm going to step away, and I'm wondering if Tina, you might call me back when time is right.
She says yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Take care.
Bye.
Talk soon.
Thank you.